You ever notice how the same problem keeps landing back on your desk, just in a different disguise? And then you end up all frustrated because you go, I don't understand. I thought we already solved for this. Or why the hell is the same thing coming back again to bite me in the butt? That was definitely me and a lot more than I would like to admit. So, in this video, I'm going to show you the exact problem solving framework that I use now so you can stop chasing your own tail with the same problems and start getting them off your plate for good once and for all. So here's how I used to do it, right? Something would break, I'd look at it, an answer would pop into my head, I'd go fix it, done. It feels super fast, it feels productive, I'm able to move on. And honestly, a lot of it was just based off of just instinct. And it works for the most part until that same problem comes back. The creative still isn't scaling, designers are still stuck in that feedback revision hell like all the time. The team drops the same ball they dropped last month. The ad account is still plateaued, or even worse, it's still struggling, and we can't happen to find some way out of it. Most of the time, it's because I never actually killed the problem. I just treated the symptom, and the real thing underneath was still alive, waiting to come and bite me in the butt once all over again. So, this framework is how you stop that. It's a repeatable way to hunt down the actual root of a problem, solve it once, and make it stay solved. The best part, though, is that you stop wasting brain power trying to figure out how to even approach a problem every time because this framework does all the heavy lifting. So we free up our head to focus on the only thing that matters, actually cracking the problem. So my coach, the president of the Lean Institute, he taught me Toyota's version of this. Then I took Uncle Bruce Lee's advice and adapted it for my own style. And the version I use now with my team and the leaders I coach, this is the version that I'm about to show you. It also pulls in a little bit of acquisition.com's Sharon, and the memo that they use puts it in here as well. Here's what I'll do for you, okay? Right now, you're probably a really sharp technician, whether it's media buying, creative strategy, whatever your lane might be, right? Whether it's data, for example. This takes you from great at your job to someone who can solve almost anything that lands on your plate because we have this framework. And it also is great for developing our problem solving skills as well. So that's the real level up here. Let's go into the template. Let's go into the charter and actually start filling this out. The rest of this video is me pretty much showing you how to fill it out and why these things matter, and how your coach will start to work together with you to work through all of these. Okay. So, first off, we start here. Expansive problem solving the framework runs through 4 phases. First, we go sleuthing, then we strategize, then we plan, and then we roll it out. I'll be talking you through each one as we get to each section. Okay. We want to start here just by putting in what the working title of the problem is. And I want you to be specific. I'll actually walk you through these ones down below, but start getting specific here. If you go creative, that's a problem. That's not a problem. That's a word. Okay. We want to go, well, our creative should be outputting with a hit rate of X, but it's currently at Y. Now we've got a gap. Now we've got a problem, right? And that's all a problem is. It's just a gap between where we're supposed to be and where we are right now. We close that gap, problem solved. All right. Who is the problem solver? Put one name in here. DAI simply stands for the directly accountable individual, DAI. So who is directly accountable for making this problem go away? Put in the name of your coach. What version is this? I'll show you why versioning matters in a minute. When did we start and when did we last update it? So how we handle versions. If your sleuthing changes what the actual problem is, then don't just write over this doc. We want to start a V2 and keep this one so that we can have like snapshots. I guess a bit like GitHub repos. We always have those snapshots whenever we do a push. So capture learnings at each stage and we can hit the undo button if needed, right? But we want to be able to capture those learnings. That's the number one priority. Let's move into phase one, the sleuthing. We don't start solving, we start establishing the conviction that this problem is the problem, right? The point here is to be a detective, not a firefighter. Hunt the real suspect, get to the root cause before we start any solving. So be like a good doctor, I guess. I'm throwing a whole bunch of analogies at you here. But a good doctor solves the disease. We don't want to just solve the symptom. I know this firsthand. My wife, Natalie, has chronic fatigue, and That's the symptom, but it could be caused by various different types of pathologies. So we've had to kiss so many frogs with doctors because they all just care about making the symptom go away. And it's been a really arduous process trying to find a doctor that actually gave a shit enough to help us find the cause of it and make that go away. Right? We're done with the creams and the lotions and the all the different types of naturopathic stuff. It just got us nowhere because we were just chasing our tails with the symptom. So we want to be that type of person where we understand that 90% of being a chess master is just sitting there and looking at the chessboard to plot things out, not just shoving a whole bunch of chess pieces around. That's just fucking idiotic. All right. Most of the work lives here. Solve the wrong thing and it comes back usually a lot harder. You're more demoralized the second time because you're like, why the heck am I not solving for this yet? And your people will trust you less because it's come back again. So it starts to take away the trust and confidence in the problem solver as well. Sloppy sleuthing is stealing time from your future self. I genuinely believe that. So, and I hate stealing time from myself and from anyone else really. So that's why we want to stay here. So let's go back up the top, right? What is the problem? The working title. Make the gap specific when you're filling this thing in, right? Creatives aren't performing. That isn't a problem. The hit rate being 8%, it needs to be 15. That's a problem. That's a clear gap from here to there because a vague gap gets us a vague solution. Garbage in, garbage out. So put your response in here. Who owns this problem, right? One name owns the outcome. That's you, the directly accountable individual. You want to discuss something with your coach, though, or your manager who gave you this problem, right, to solve or approved that you go solve this problem. You want to get clear on two things. Number one, hey, coach, do I own the outcome or am I owning just like the doing of this thing, right? I want you to own the outcome. And second one, which calls can you make on your own versus which ones to escalate to your coach? If in doubt, of course, escalate. You don't have to list out every single last thing, but make sure that you list them down below here, right? The calls that you can make on your own and the calls that get escalated to your coach. So that way it's extremely clear. And then whenever you're in doubt, escalate, have a conversation about it, have a coaching one-on-one, and then be able to put it in here if you catch that as something that is extremely clear. So don't spend too much time here, is all I'm saying. Next one, who is the customer of this problem? Now, don't just list who, describe how. If it gets solved, who benefits and how do they benefit? Because if the problem sticks around or gets worse, who suffers and how? Because the how is what gives meaning to our efforts. We actually know who this impacts, right? It's not just solve the problem without a face. We want to put faces and actual people into it as well. So just write it down in here, right? Put the name, the team, or the customer type and how they benefit if we solve this, and if who suffers if they don't, and how as well. Get really clear around who the customer is. So someone who benefits or someone who suffers. Let's move on to the next one. What is the target state? What does performing well actually look like? What does success look like? Make it specific. We want it to be as specific as a pin on the map, right? In other words, we want to make the finish line an actual finish line, not just like somewhere around there. If you get somewhere around there, you're winning. The example I always use is you don't just tell your Uber driver when you book an Uber to be like in this vicinity, then you're not even going to know if you're there, right? It's a pin on a map. Like I want to get to the intersection of 3rd and 16th Street or whatever it might be. And as the very wise Seneca said himself, if one does not know to which port one is sailing, then no wind is favorable because we're just running around like headless chickens. I'm just kind of adding to Seneca's quote here. But here's the thing. The target that I'm asking you to put in here isn't a bet that you have to nail exactly. I'm not asking you to like sign your life away in blood or anything, right? It's not going to cost you your firstborn child. It needs to be specific enough to move towards. So don't waste time over like, is it 15? Is it 17? Do I have to get it absolutely right? You're not making a bet. You just need to give us a direction and be specific about that direction. Just because we don't get there at the very end of it doesn't mean that your head's going to get chopped off, right? Be specific, but don't treat it like a sacred cow. Once we establish that target state, we come back to today, right now. What is the current state right now? How are we performing now? What's really happening? We want to give an accurate and descriptive snapshot and use data, not just opinions. Now, if you know your MER target to 2 decimal places, your conversion rate target, whatever it might be, to 2 decimal places, you'd never spend money on it, just like a feeling, right? So hold yourself to the same standard here. Bring in the numbers, not just I think, or it feels like, or someone else told me. We don't want to be problem solving off of the proxy, right? We want to solve off of the real thing. So if the data doesn't exist yet, then that's the job. Go and see for yourself and capture that data. Sit next to a strategist, watch how the work actually gets done, not just what's on paper in the SOP. Review the last 10 outputs, the real ones, not just, again, the proxy. Go watch a call end to end, see how they actually interact, or observe how a process actually runs, right? And then you can time it, you can count the different touch points, you can map it out. We want to capture that because a lot of the time, a process on paper and the process in the trenches are run very, very differently, right? That gap could be where the problem's been living the whole time. So we want to be able to look in that type of way. And as we get to sleuthing or further down sleuthing, we might be able to then use other tools. I'll be able to show them to you so that you can start uncovering that thing. I'll give you some examples as well, right? Because again, we don't want to be working off of just the symptom. Or at least thinking that we're solving a problem and then just solving the symptom. If you wanted to just go solve for the symptom because it's time sensitive right now, absolutely go ahead and do that. But I just don't want you going in there thinking like you're solving the problem and being like, yeah, everything's solved, but it's not. Okay. I just want we want to know what we're getting ourselves into. So down below, what you want to do is capture a dated snapshot each time the current state meaningfully moves forward. And then we keep closing that gap towards our target. Okay. So you'll have multiple of these in this section. You have multiple of them as you start going through with this, because you'll have a certain snapshot on a certain date where you're describing the current state of that date, right? What the numbers as they stand today are. So what metrics that matter, how are they performing? You want to attach evidence, right? Show tables, so show charts, process maps, screenshots, real examples, so you can provide your like links and screenshots down in here. And then in terms of go and see, this is where we want to start logging out what we went to go see, right? With your own eyes. So this is what I observed. You can put in where and who, and then also what I found. So what I kind of like discovered. You can keep this log in here to continually describe the current state. And of course, the current state will change with each day, right? Like the present moment will change. Even by the time I'm done with this sentence, that present moment was already gone. Same type of deal. Then we want to get clear around what type of problem it is. Now, in a completely different video for my expansive manager school community, I talk about the different types of problems and how they differ and how to approach them. And if you're going through this, then your coach should be able to talk you through these as well. I'll talk you through a little bit very quickly right now. Okay. So let's identify the type. It decides your approach, and using the wrong approach is why most fixes fail, right? So if we run a heavy process on a spot fire, then the house burns down. And if we treat a recurring fire like a one-off, then that fire will never die. Take it from someone who used to work in the fire service when I had to serve my country in Singapore, okay? So if it's a spot fire, you can take that off. This is usually just one-off. It's broke right now. We stamp it out. We get back to normal. If it's a recurring fire, then it's that same fire. It's when that same fire keeps coming back. We need to go find out what's sparking it if we want it to go away once and for all. Then we start moving into different territory. This is like improvement territory, not fixing territory, where the gap, the problem is that we're creating a new problem, right? We're raising the bar. Nothing is broken yet. We just want more. We want better of that thing. And then there's the new frontier, where this doesn't even exist yet. We have to go out and invent it and build it. That's a bigger moonshot. right? It's not something that's already there. We want more. It's like not there yet. We don't have it. We need to start putting it in. And then put in why you believe it's this type in here. Just explain your rationale and show your thinking. This is extremely helpful whenever you're trying to develop your own skills to start putting down your logic and your thinking in here. Then you can look back at this sheet as you've gone through your problem solving journey. Okay. Now, let's pull in something that is partially from Sharon and acquisition.com, which is, they say no memo, no decision, right? So our memo in here is answering the question, why is solving this important? Like, why this, why now? Out of the dozens of things you could be chasing, why this one and why now? Naming the best and worst cases forces us to zoom out, to prioritize, and to acknowledge that we ourselves are finite. Our resources are finite, and we want to be able to manage and keep our crying babies at a manageable number. We don't want to just like open up 12 different problem solving extra like efforts or different problems to solve and then say, hey, we're focused on 12 problems. That's not what focus is. That's 12 things, and you can only probably focus on one crying baby and carry that baby at that time and leave the other babies at that moment in time to cry or, I don't know, touch a hot stove, whatever it might be, right? So that's why we want to answer this question. What's the best case if we solve for it? What's the worst case if we don't solve for it? So why this problem ahead of everything else that's on my plate? Write that down in here. Again, we're kind of just putting our thinking and putting it on paper. And a lot of times, for myself at least, when I think about something and I capture it so that my eyes can see it in front of me, I can start to see whether like I'm being too ambitious or I'm sandbagging a little bit and going too light on myself. Is this problem, as we go through and capture the current state, go walk away from this piece of paper and actually do the work of sitting down with people, going and seeing ourselves, etc., we might start being able to get data to answer this question. Like, we might think that it's a spot fire, but is this problem symptomatic of something deeper? Like, what actually is the root cause? Let's go sniff around for clues. What lives upstream of this problem? Who touches this process? Are there any patterns in the data that we've been capturing? Right? Then we chase the why chain down, and each answer becomes the next why. So I'll show you an example of this 5 whys thing in a second, right? We keep going until we've hit the thing that if we fix that, the problem won't come back. That's what we want to be able to get to. This is where expansive problem solving really starts to shine, because we're getting to that thing. All right. So let's have an example of this 5 whys in here. Man, the creative always needs to have rework, and it's super frustrating because it's this back and forth revision hell between the creative strategist and our editors and our designers, for example, right? Hey, guess what? I went to go sit down and watch the way our editors and designers work, and I also asked them how they interpret the briefs that they receive as well, and they told me that the editors just don't seem to. I just noticed that they don't seem to get it. Right? They've told me themselves, but then also I've looked at the brief versus the output and actually studied those, and they just don't seem to get it. They say that the briefs are unclear to them, right? And I've read it myself, and even for me, I find it unclear as well. Why is that happening? I need to then zoom up the stream, upstream of that specific problem, and let me start talking to the strategists. I found out by looking at their work that the strategists only spend 8 minutes per brief. Why are they spending only 8 minutes per brief? Is that even sufficient? This last why might then make me start a next charter, be like, oh, I think the problem is way deeper than I originally thought. Let me go find out there. I'm going to start to change the problem statement at the start. So anything we find in here updates the current state, right? We start another current state kind of snapshot. Let's go back down here. And if it turns out that the real problem is deeper and the problem statement has changed, we open up that V2 charter, like it said in this example, right? So 5 whys, put your responses in here. Put what you think the root cause you're attacking is. Put your answer in here. And ask yourself the question, does this change the problem statement? So if no, then we can just keep moving. If yes, at any point we find that the problem is deeper than you originally thought, we open up a V2 charter, right? And then we take the findings back up into Q1 above and Q question 5 above. And also, if you do think that it changes the problem, put your thinking in here as well. Notice how this is a theme. We're putting down our thinking all the time, right? As an aside, before I go into strategizing, all of us, most of us, are now working with some type of AI copilot, whether that's Claude, everyone's best friend, or using Codex because now they've got their different models very recently, as of July 2026. You start putting these things in and you start having your responses in here. By these things, I mean putting your responses in here, then we can get Claude to come read this document and help us along the way also, and possibly even reveal thinking gaps, right? And so that's why we want to put that rigor in here. It's going to go in there at some point anyway if you're already using Claude. Might as well give it one canonical document that it can go through. Okay? All right, let's move on to phase number 2. Let's start strategizing once we found what we believe the root cause that we're attacking is, why it's important, like establishing all this stuff, right? We really want to establish this conviction first that this problem is the problem, and then we can start to strategize. We understand what we're really up against. The trick here is because you've already spent a lot of brain power and possibly hours or days in this process here, our brain, our gung ho brain would probably be like, let's go, let's send it and start solving this son of a bitch, right? Uncle D is here to tell you, don't fall in love with your first solution because only having one option is not a strategic decision. Remember that image up above of the chess player? You don't just go, okay, I think of this move, and then you just go like just chat it, right? Especially when it's like a complex problem. They sit there and you put your hand on the piece and you're like, if I move this, then maybe that thing might happen. All right, I'm not going to move that. And then you start strategizing and considering what next move will open up options for a whole bunch of other moves, right? So don't make that like early game noob mistake. And as Peter Drucker, uh, management guru, wrote in the Effective Executive, a decision without an alternative is a desperate gambler's throw. So don't be that desperate gambler. You'd never put your entire budget behind just one angle because you fell in love with it, and then you just go full send 100% of budget, one angle, let's go, right? The same principle we want to apply here. Want to bring at least 3 options down below before we commit to this is the solution. We want to apply that same type of rigor of thinking. No sloppy problem solving, right? So, first one, what are the various ways we can solve this? So, let's come up with 3 options down below, and then we can weigh each one against whether it's time, money, quality, man hours, how reversible it is, and what the opportunity cost is. You can add more columns if you have more options that spring to mind for you, but we want to be able to weigh them up. So, you know that triangle that usually it's designers or videographers or editors, they'll talk about it all the time. Cheap, fast, good. Pick 2, you can't pick 3, right? So what are they? Let's put them down in here and let's start showing our thinking in terms of where they sit against these dimensions. So we put that in there and then recommend which of these options would be the one that you would choose. What's your recommendation? We want to think through it here clearly, and then we want to put forward the recommendation and why we recommended that thing. If you have trouble, you can also run through, by trouble, I mean, if this isn't sufficient enough for you in terms of making a recommendation, you can also put your options in here and score them against what you think the impact of that solution would be, how confident that solution would be the one, and then how difficult or how easy it would be to roll that thing out. And then once you give it a score, right, the highest scoring one, you can do a score out of 10, for example. Then the highest scoring one can give you some clues as well. So that's where we want to be first. Spend time actually considering these options as you'd best go. Don't just go, well, it already came to mind anyway. I know what the obvious one is, so I'll just write option A as my like best one, and then I'll just fill this in for the sake of this exercise because Uncle D told me to do so. Well, if you're gonna do that, then it's gonna be very obvious for anyone else going through this. And worst of all, if you just stop thinking at option A, then there might be actually like proper and well better solutions in option B and C. So spend the time, okay? And then make your recommendation. And if you can argue against the other ones as how would these be actual recommendations, then now you've put some rigor behind it. Again, you put this into something like Claude, it can help you along with clarifying that piece as well and whether there are any hidden benefits in the other solutions outside of just your recommendation. Now, then we do some risk analysis on your recommended option. What could go wrong with my recommended option? How badly could it go wrong? What's the cost of getting this thing wrong? Where are the pressure points with my recommended solution? And do this with your team. You can run a pre-mortem. A pre-mortem, if I'm not wrong, is something that was put forward by Gary Klein, and it's a role-playing thing where the manager will sit everyone down and visualize a future where stuff didn't work out. And the line that they use is 6 weeks from now, and this thing has failed badly. What happened? So we're putting ourselves into that future pacing, imagining that future, and then we walk backwards to think about what those things are. It's just another way of revealing pressure points and also revealing performing some type of risk analysis. And then finally, we want to go down here, which is put forward your strongest case for the option that you didn't pick or it was the bottom of your list. We want to put that in here so that we can go, okay, I've actually put some rigor behind this thinking. That is how we strategize against problem solving. And then we move on into making the chosen solution into actual commitments. We start planning, right? We put them down with dates, names, dates, one owner, real constraints. Let's clean this thing up. And every action has a name and a due date, and the person signs off. So we want to confirm. We do not want to assume. And we also want to set a feedback loop that catches problems in days, not just weeks or months. We want to catch them early. So here's how we do it. First, we put in the constraints. What is the timeline, the deadline? What is the scope? So based on our target state, we just reiterate that here to go, what is the scope of once we hit this, once we cross this finish line, we know that that is what we want to achieve, that we're there. And then what type of budget is there here, right? What type of monetary budget is there? Are there any kind of man-hour budgets or allowed number of people on this team? Because we'll be likely pulling them from other BAU work or other projects. Put them in here. Then we want to get really specific. Specific names, real dates, and we get each of the people to sign off on their own row so that they confirm that they can actually commit to the thing. So effectively, who needs to do what and by when. And then once we have all this stuff going, we can sit everyone down and go, hey, can you commit? Can I get your commitment for this, please? And then they can just sign off and say, yes, I can, right? So now down below, we're going to list out resources and support. So we want to check in with each person. Don't assume that they're available. We want to link everything and don't make people go hunting for resources. So resources can be information or resources can be how we're going to, a document agreeing how we're going to approach certain thing or a link to some type of canonical doc or the data dashboard, etc. Right? So what do we need? Who's the one who's going to need it? When are they going to need it? Where does it live? Add the link in here. And then can we just confirm that all this is Gucci? Want to put that in there. So you can just have everything in the one place as opposed to having to bother you on Slack and be like, hey, where was this one other doc that I was meant to read again? Or where should I be submitting this stuff? Just add it all in here. Okay. So that we can preserve people's energy from and not have them just start wasting time looking for where things live. We want to preserve their energy for actually solving the damn thing or like moving stuff forward, acting on the plan. All right, what could derail this? Remember we did all the risks up front, right? Up the top. This is kind of different to obstacles below. I'll talk to you about that later. But we want to front load all the risks and pressure points that we can see coming, the work that we did above, right? And this is a good time to ask the group also because they'll be involved in the doing. Are there any risks as they look through their own calendar? Or if, for example, one of your problem solving helpers or contributors is in sales, then one of the risks is they could have a really good week of leads booking time with your team with them, and then now that week might get wiped away because they're like too busy trying to close, for example, right? Or a manager who might have like, I just, one of the risk is I could have a bunch of fires that I have to deal with during that time, so put that in, right? Put the risk in. How likely is this risk going to occur? Give it a percentage, for example, right? Do some probability instead of just possibility. I don't want to go, well, it's possible this would happen. That doesn't help anyone. How probable is it? Going to be helpful. What would we do about it if this thing actually occurs, right? And what is the early warning sign that it's going to start to actually happen? Are there any signals that we can see, right? So as an example, if you're, let's use the salesperson again, if they're going to be part of this problem solving crew, now an early warning sign could be that for your team's lead gen, the CAC drops dramatically. And so your budget is going to just bring a whole bunch of sales calls in. That might be the early warning sign. Yeah. Okay. Let's make sure we have a feedback loop. What is the metric, right, that we're going to measure to know whether we are closer or further away from that target state, the intended outcome? So we want to have a scoreboard metric or scoreboard metrics and also some type of leading indicator. I kind of talked to you about what a leading indicator is right here with this early warning sign. Same type of deal, right? It's a number tied to an activity that moves in like days, not just weeks, so we can catch any drift early. So what we're going to measure, the target metric or metrics, we're going to put that in here. What we measured for the leading indicator portion, we put that in here as well, or leading indicators. How often will each be measured? How often will we meet to check in as a problem solving crew? And who is in those check-ins? We're going to put it in here as well. Notice how everything is so laid out to be specific because I want to minimize guesswork. I want to minimize people having to guess wrong, and then every other person gets frustrated. This specificity helps a lot, right? It's, I guess, to bring it back to a personal example, when your internet is not working and then your internet company says, yes, we look forward to your technician coming to your home to fix it for you. They'll be showing up on Wednesday between the hours of 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. What the hell? And they go, make sure that someone is at home to let this person in. That does not help you. It's so broad, it's not specific enough that you probably have to take the day off of work or take the day off of doing something fun to sit there between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. to wait for this fucker to show up. We don't want that, right? So that's why we want that specificity in here. We don't want to do it to ourselves. Okay, let's move on. Phase 4, the rollout. This is where we run it. This is not where we definitely not where we let our foot off the gas, because we run it and we find out whether the gap is actually closing or closed. And we want to, once we're done with the rollout, we want to lock in whatever worked. Okay. So, and rollouts run in this iterative improvement loop. We don't execute the plan as one big push. We close the gap through small experiments, right? One at a time. Each experiment, each step, we want to have a hypothesis before we run it. And then by stating what we anticipate would happen before we do any action. The gap between what we anticipated or expected would happen and what actually happened, that's where we get to level up because we're starting to now attenuate and go closer and closer and closer and closer, right? So a question here to answer is like, what are the obstacles standing in our way, right? The things standing between the current state and the target state. We want to add to this list as we discover them, because guess what? If it's going to be a smoke-filled room, we're going to start to be able to see more stuff as we start walking through that room. So we can log them in here and go, oh, did not notice this before. Let's make sure we tag it, right? So we list them as we discover them. We're not going to just make them all go away at once. We attack them one at a time. So we use the detective emoji against, like, I usually just put it at the start here to go, this is the one that I'm facing right now. Because I'm just gonna, as I notice them, I'm just gonna throw the obstacles in here, right? I'm just gonna keep adding and adding and adding and adding and adding. So, but just because I notice them in this sequence does not mean that I'm gonna attack them in that sequence. So the one that you're on, you put this emoji, and once it's the obstacle has been knocked down, we can just go here and then strike through it, right? And just go, the cancellation strike through. Don't delete it because you want to be able to see retrospectively what obstacles were brought up and um, learn from them, right? If you just delete it, then you lose it forever. Or you just have to hit Command Z like a son of a bitch. You don't want that either. So question number 2 is my experiment loop. This is not necessarily a question per se, but we just want to move on to this section where one row is one cycle of the experiment, right? Before we take the step, we fill in these 3 columns, and then our coach would read that, and we would talk to our coach and go, okay, this is what I think would be happening next. And then I log the next 2 after I've taken this step. And then I reconnect my coach again to go, this is what we learned. Here's how it goes, right? The obstacle I'm attacking, I listed out in here. So what is the next step for this obstacle? What is the next experiment? I put that in here. I describe it in here. What do I anticipate would happen? Again, you're not making a bet. You're just going, hypothesis. What do I think would happen? You put your hypothesis in here. And then you go do the thing and you log what actually happened instead, right? And fill in what I learned. Not what I discovered, not what I found out, but what I actually learned, what I learned from it, right? So as an example, I used to have, like, I've had before uh people I coach, managers I coach that would go, the obstacle I'm attacking is that it is really unclear how this process works that's not on paper, like in the trenches, right? So my next step, right? I could be working on like one obstacle and needing multiple steps to knock down this one obstacle. So it could be the same obstacle here and here, and like I just add rows as we go, but multiple experiments. So their first one could be, I am going to go observe um, how the team runs the process of creative testing, and specifically the briefing process, right? From briefing through to that first iteration. What do I anticipate would happen? Well, I anticipate that by doing this, it would reveal that they could go, what I anticipate would happen, my next step is to go observe. What I anticipate would happen, I would have observed. And I'm sitting there like, bro, are you serious? I'm gonna go observe. What I anticipate would happen, would observe. That's not anticipation. That's like for sure would happen. We don't want that, right? We're gonna go, what I anticipate would happen? I anticipate that I'll notice that the briefing process on paper would be dramatically different from the briefing process in the trenches in these specific areas, for example. Then they can log what actually happened, what they actually observe, and then they can go, what did I learn? I learned that there's a huge disconnect, et cetera, et cetera. Now there's something usable for you, right? So don't just phone it in and go, my next experiment, I'm gonna go talk to someone. What I anticipate would happen, I would have talked to someone. Bruh, no, not acceptable, okay? All right, anyway. So if what happened matched what you expected, then good, you understand the system, especially if you do it in the approach that I just talked about, right? If it didn't, even better. That's why I don't want you to just phone it in, because that surprise is probably the most valuable thing on the page, like in this section, right? Because we want to bank that learning and then we pick the next step. That's how we get wiser and better at this problem solving thing each go. If we just phone it in, then might as well not do this. Crumple up this thing. I'm sorry for making you watch this video, and just go on the way that you've been doing it before. Let's see how that works out for all of us, right? Okay. Then we start going into something like effectively like a retro, right? To go back towards target state and the current state and ask yourself the question, where are we now? Doing the plan is not the same as closing the gap. Like, it's very easy for us to just do the plan, tick off every task, and have the problem still sit there. That's what I mean by the whole like phoning it in thing. We got to keep our eyes on the prize and stay true to what we're trying to achieve here. So if the gap actually is closed, then below, say what actually moved the needle, and also where you think you got lucky on. And if it did not get closed, that's not a failure, that's a finding, right? The solution was a hypothesis, just like how each step was a hypothesis. Now that we've tested it, we know, and we can go back to sleuthing and open up a V2. Much in the same way a lot of, like growth teams and performance marketing teams, paid social teams would approach like creative strategy, for example, right? It's not a bet and then it just fails and everyone gets blamed. It's okay, we got some learning. This angle does not work, right? Or this concept doesn't work because of XYZ reasons, or we have a hypothesis over why it doesn't work. Now we go again until we find the thing that cracks it, and then it becomes a business changing angle or business changing ad. Same thing here, a business changing solution. That's what we want to be able to get to, right? And just like how I've seen multiple dozens, if not hundreds of brands where all it took is just one ad to crack it and they look like a dramatically different business, same type of thing here. Once you land on that solution and the problem solver starts to ping it too, life looks completely different afterwards, right? From a problem solver perspective, but then also from that problem itself. That's why we put so much rigor against this. Yeah. Okay. So let's list out the target state. We've already have that work up the top. Let's copy paste it here so that visually we can see it all in one place instead of scrolling all the way up and then scrolling all the way down again. And what was the original current state when we first started on this whole thing? Let's put it down in here. Paste from top, bring to bottom. Where are we now? That's just your latest snapshot. Let me show you. That would just be your latest snapshot in the current condition, because you're going to have a ton of these, right? Wherever your latest one is, just take that and put a version of it down below, right? And then go, did the gap actually close? Did we arrive at the target state? Yes, partly, or no? And then if it's yes or partly, like what actually moved the needle? Let's talk about that and make sure we extract those learnings. What do we think we got lucky on? Put your response in here. If the gap did not close, that's a finding, not a failure. Our solution was a hypothesis. We've now tested it. Take this back into sleuthing and keep going, right? I'm very serious about this whole solve the actual problem thing. That's why we always also need a coach, because this can, especially it's a very complex problem, it takes a lot of resilience, a lot of persistence, and to stay in that zone of like, I'm not going to stop until we're there. I'm not going to stop coming up with angles, much in the same way, like we're not going to stop coming up with angles and continually testing until we have like 100K a day spender, right? Until that point, if you just start being like, all right, I'll just phone it in, just do it because I gotta, then we're not going to have that benefit. Okay. So, how do we lock this thing in? If the solution works, it's not finished, because if it only lives in your head, you're still stuck carrying that key man risk. It all depends on you. Like, when are you going to be able to go on leave? Everyone's going to be coming to ask you all the time. And guess what? If we don't capture it here, we forget also, because we're busy and some other thing is going to come pull our attention, and we might get hazy around how we actually approach this thing. So we capitalize on the timing to then capture the SOP, the playbook, the template, the brief, whatever it is, put that in here, right? Name out who the DAI is for keeping it there, keeping this thing maintained and up to date, etc. Right? How do we know if it slipped back? So we thought we solved it, but it actually slipped back. How will we know? Let's put that in here. And where do we watch whether the slipping back is occurring or not? Like, do we need to create a dashboard for it? If so, whose dashboard, right? Where does it live? And let's attach it to the DAI. Then we start landing the plane with learnings in a more zoomed out sense, right? The experiment loop above already captures every learning cycle. This is the zoomed out version where it's about the problem. It's about you as a problem solver also. So we start to log down, put some reflective time aside, and go, what were the big takeaways? What surprised me about as I was going through this? what surprised me about myself, about other people, about the team, about just any of it. And then what would I do differently next time? To make sure that this is not a blame game exercise or some type of really dumb thing that we do all the time where it's like, oh, if I could do this again, I would do it like this. It sounds like we're being reflective. Here's why it's dumb. You can't do it again. It's in the past. So you can't even confirm whether your ideas that come up here are any good or not, or whether they'll work. It's like hearing my friends go, well, if I just did this, this, and this differently, she wouldn't have broken up with me. You don't know. You can't confirm that because she's already broken up with you, bro. Like it's done. So don't fall into that trap. Instead, think about what about next time. Well, perhaps if I stopped playing Xbox the moment I walked into my house and I actually sat down and listened to whoever I'm dating next, then perhaps she wouldn't like be pissed off with me all the time and then eventually leave me. Next time, right? Take the learning into the next time. Don't just keep the learning in the past and then go, oh, I'm really satisfied. I think I learned something here because if I did this again, it wouldn't happen. You don't know. Okay. Now, next one about you. This is where you can go just really for yourself also and go, what was the part that I found the hardest? What was challenging for me? Does that give me clues as to where I can start developing next? Right. And because you're working on this with your coach will be a very helpful partner here as well. Right. And your coach will also close this thing out with a love that, wish that, something that I do with everyone that I coach or is in the expansive school community. Right. So love that. Like what you did well, or this is the prompt for your coach to write for you, right? What did you do well specifically, right? The coach is going to put it in here. Wish that. What did they wish to see next time you start problem solving? Put it in here. This here is clues. It's your coach's gift to go, I watched the last time I observed you during the last, I don't know, 6 jujitsu tournaments, and I noticed that you have this one habit. If you stop doing this one bad habit, I think you'll be able to win more games, right? So it's not bad feedback. It's not constructive, like whatever you want to call it, right? With that kind of shitty insinuation, constructive feedback or critical feedback, or when I receive bad feedback, it's just trying to help you grow, man. So take it on, right? And then finally, what is the next bigger problem that your coach would like to hand you? It doesn't have to be a specific problem, but it could be in a ballpark, a certain area, right? So that was a lot, 14 pages, in fact, of a lot. That ends this walkthrough for this style of expansive problem solving. There is also a coach's version of this as a cheat sheet that I have for all of my expansive managers inside of my school community. If you want to find out more, link is in the description down below. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, please ask it in the comments. I will be here to help you answer them. And of course, if it's a whole bunch of stuff, because problem solving across different types of companies is very unique because every company is unique, then I'll see if I can answer that in the comments also. If not, I'll see you in the community. All right. See you next time.